same can also be said for the military-industrial complex. I mean, if you turn on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, you are hearing from former CIA director, former Pentagon employee, former director of national intelligence, but you're not hearing voices like whether left or right. You're just not hearing the people who are outside of that. We're very rarely hearing the people who are outside.
What the fuck? Because why would you bring on Bob the Hobo to talk about like fucking CIA secrets? Why the fuck would you bring on fucking Bob the Builder and like Tom and Jerry to talk about like CIA secrets and whether or not Pete Hegseth has broke protocol? Like, what do these people have to like say about like fucking a fucking like high level how to protect like state secrets and shit? Like, what the fuck, dude? Like, this glorification of stupidity is insane. Like, they're really it's a race to the bottom, right? It's a race to the bottom of the fucking food chain. Why would you bring Dr. Retard to talk about COVID? Exactly, dude, I can't. Dude, these people, the most insufferable part about these kinds of people is that they glorify stupidity, all right? Like, if anything, if there's anything that, like, pisses me the most off, I remember when Fox News and Friends, all right, yeah, Fox and Friends had, like, what was it? When Harvard was getting sued, they were just asking somebody at like some correspondent dinner, right, or something. They asked like a random ass old man. They're like, "How do you feel? How do you feel about going after Harvard?" And he's like,
"Well, I'm really glad they're getting their dues. I'm really glad that Harvard is finally getting to pay. These education elites, they've gotten away with too much."
It's like, bitch, what the fuck? Who the fuck are you? What the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck?
Side of that establishment. But now, Tucker Carlson gets to decide. It's not up to some suit in a corporation somewhere. It's up to the guy who's built the trust with his audience, like it or not. So anyway, that would just be my only bit of critique there. But a good start from Konstantin Kasin. It seems like we've got a great bit of content here. He gets it. We'll see. Any thoughts on any of this, Rob?
Well, I'm looking forward to the pivot to, hey, but there's this one thing that's just too important for people to be allowed to have freedom.
But not Israel. Everything else is fine. Yeah. Just not, whoa. We got wars to fight here.
And that's different than when you heard that pitch from people that wanted to tell you that about global warming, and that's different than when you heard it about COVID, and it's different when you heard it countless other times. But this one is actually so important that we can't allow for that freedom thing because people are getting it wrong.
There you go. Okay, let's keep playing.
Well, what could go wrong with democratizing information? Well, as it turns out, quite a lot. Just as the assumptions of the elite class were proved wrong by the actions of their fellow.
But like, at least with a heli crash, you're kind of presenting it as like, oh shit, oh, you're near the heli crash. Oh, what was it like? Oh, like, what, did anything happen or whatever, right? Like, at least it was from that angle. But like, with something like CIA state secrets, like, bro, what the fuck? You're not gonna ask again. You're not gonna ask like, Dave Retard here, okay, about his opinions on, like, fucking CIA state secrets.
Citizens during the era of Trump, Brexit, and COVID, the assumptions some of us held about the future of the media are now crumbling before our very eyes. With politics becoming the primary form of entertainment in Western society, more of us now get our news and opinions from entertainers rather than serious commentators, and, just as importantly, we often struggle to tell the difference between the two. Now, having transitioned from a career in comedy to my current role as writer, interviewer, and political commentator, I can hardly complain about the meshing of culture, politics, and entertainment. And I am not complaining. I'm merely pointing out that the incentive structures and thought patterns we would typically associate with the entertainment business are not the same as those we would expect to see in journalism and academia. This difference was perfectly illustrated in the recent debate between journalist and author Douglas Murray and comedian and podcaster Dave Smith on the Joe Rogan Experience, the world's biggest podcast. Officially, the full 3-hour discussion was mostly about the wars in Gaza and Ukraine, with Smith being in the so-called anti-war camp and Murray being a supporter of both Israel's campaign to eliminate Hamas and Ukraine's
Please roast Dave Smith, okay? Please. All right. If there's anything I love watching, it's watching Dave Smith's easily most fragile masculinity getting shattered, okay? Because I'm going to tell you this right now. He has such fragile masculinity, okay? He has the most fragile
struggle to
masculinity.
retain its sovereignty and independence.
Yeah.
These conflicts and both men's positions have been debated endlessly. That part of the discussion is less relevant here. The much more interesting fault lines were exposed on the fringe.
It was hilarious when Diary of a CEO got a hit piece for inviting Mr. Retarded PH in 40-day water fasting, and the Brett Whiteness thing in his 700 anti-vax episode coming to vouch for Diary of CEO. Like, you're not helping, bro. Okay, I don't know what kind of eldritch ritual you just spewed out, but I totally agree. I get the spirit of it. Okay?
Of the debate.
All
The
right, let's pause
conversation
it right
began
here.
with a
That's a mighty convenient approach.
Oh,
to have.
convenient, isn't
It's a
it?
mighty Sorry, go
The
ahead.
bulk of the conversation, the substance of it.
Oh,
Like, I mean, it's wild to me how many people
wild.
who want to find a way to defend Douglas Murray in this debate, which just on so many levels to me seems to be like a crazy losing game. Like, I just like, wow.
How, dude, what, dude, you can't be serious, dude. How could you be this salty? Dude, come on. If somebody thinks that you fucking lost, like, dude, you just, please. Oh my God. Oh my,
Why would
dude,
you want
so
to go
cringe,
down
dude.
with
Kill
this
me.
sinking ship?
Kill you.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
But
don't,
really,
in
to
Minecraft.
just brush away, forget about any of the content of the debate. That's been debated before. Well, okay, but like, there's two wars raging on right now. After, you know, again, as I've made the point before, I often call what's going on in Gaza a war. Not really sure that's the appropriate name for it. But
More like
no,
a slaughter, am I right?
Especially if you're going to be talking about like
sorry.
journalistic standards and the difference between entertainers and commentators, which again, as Konstantin admits himself, he's essentially the same thing I am. I mean, I guess he doesn't still do comedy. I still do comedy, but he's a guy talking about issues that he cares about on a podcast who is not an expert in any of these areas. But isn't it awfully convenient how there could be so much discussed and written about, you know, like my standards or my lack of expertise or all of this, and none of them ever want to do is point to like, they've got these 5 things wrong. Douglas Murray demonstrated his expertise in this point. It's never that.
I feel really bad for his co-host, okay? His co-host is just... He's just really going, fuck me, dude. His co-host is really going
And
through
in
it.
fact, he just openly, imagine like starting your review of a debate and then openly going, hey, I'm not so interested in the debate. Forget that part. But how about the other part? Like, whatever. We'll see what he's about to say here. But it is just, I don't know. I do find it incredibly revealing that anybody would be giving their take, writing their most read article on a debate, and just totally take a backdoor out of the substance of any of the debate. I don't know. It's very strange. It's
Very
strange. Damn, this
strange.
is my most read article I've ever written. It was about the Lakers-Knicks game last night. But forget about the
What
game.
the fuck are these weapons? I'm gonna die.
Let's just talk about the halftime show or whatever. It's just very bizarre to me. But all right.
Do they have a specific credentialing system that they'd like to speak to for who would be qualified to be a commentator on these issues? Because
Hell
I feel like
no.
if you took our track record against Rachel Maddow, we'd probably have a better track
Run.
record of better political analysis about basically everything from the time that I've been on this podcast. So we'll be back to just if MSNBC platforms someone. Are they endorsing Rachel Maddow right now and saying that that's the kind of expert class that we should be listening to? Or what is there some sort of a test people are supposed to take? And what test would be better than the track record of commentary and the legacy of getting things right than you and I have? So I'm curious to know in this discussion of that we need to go back to some sort of a credentialing standard. What
Dude, yeah, but the thing is that even Rachel Maddow knows more than you. That's the thing, though, right? Like, at least Rachel Maddow appeals to like intellectuals and people that actually know their shit. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like, at least Rachel Maddow tries, at the very least, right? Like, Rachel Maddow at least like cites other people or states things that other people have already covered. But you come up with OC. You come up with archive of our own. You come up with like cringe shit, right? That's what's going on. So yeah, you know, like fuck. I don't know. So stupid. Wait, what the fuck? Did I just get kidnapped?
What specifically is the standard that they're advocating for? And then give me the specific names. Who are supposed to be the voices of reason? Or where are they supposed to have come from that they now have the standard of a stamp of approval? What is the what?
No,
what
we can't
gives
just.
you
Rob, you can't just have podcasters talking about these things, says a podcaster. I mean, there's no problem having Dave Rubin and Bill Maher talk about them. We need experts. Oh, but like they're supposed to be experts. No. What this all is just a naked, like, I don't like that they disagree with me.
It's a
I don't
power
like the people
grab.
who are critical of Israel or critical of Ukraine. I don't like them getting platformed. Essentially, what's happening here, and this is just the fact, right, is that our side is winning. We're winning the battle on the podcast front. And yes, I mean, Konstantin kind of lays it out there. Yes, this became the new center of where the American political conversation is happening. And because, and in large part, it's because, well, I mean, it's a mix of things, but in large part, it has to do with the fact that the biggest podcasters happen to be really open to this anti-war point of view. You know, and they've heard people make the anti-war argument, and they're like, "Shit, that is really compelling." In the case of Tucker Carlson, for example, I mean, he's really like, you know, what went from being kind of like essentially a neocon, and then went to Iraq. He's been there, and then got turned around on it and was like, "Oh my God, this is a disaster. What we're doing here." But so because of that, now the gatekeepers, the new decentralized gatekeepers, aren't keeping the anti-war voices out. And so we've got a shot now to make our argument, and we're winning. And then you could see this in opinion polls. Support for the war in Ukraine has gone way down since the beginning of the war. And support for the war or Israel's assault on Gaza has gone way down, particularly with the younger generation. And so this is essentially it. It's like you're losing the argument. And so now we got to figure out, you know, how to plug up this hole. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Monetary Metals, an amazing company.
I don't want to support you.
Discussion of Rogan's decision to host Daryl Cooper, a man described by Tucker Carlson as American.
Bro, dude, Dave Smith is so sad. Like, this is his crash out, right? Like, this is his crashing out moment. He is crashing. He is literally crashing out, right? He's actually just straight up crashing out. Like, there's no other way to spin this.
America's most important popular historian. Cooper himself has the self-awareness not to own the label of historian, instead describing himself as a storyteller. His latest work is a series whose aim is to show World War II from the perspective of the Germans. To those who have studied World War II extensively, like Murray, Cooper's comments on Tucker Carlson's show and his podcast with Joe Rogan are obvious and frankly boringly familiar Nazi apologia. Far from being novel, the idea peddled by Cooper that Churchill was a warmonger who, quote, turned the invasion of Poland into a global war because, quote, he was funded by Zionist financiers, formed the core of wartime propaganda fabricated
sorry,
by
I'm being
Nazi
racist.
spin
I'm so
doctor
sorry.
Joseph
I'm sorry.
Goebbels.
I'm being racist.
The argument that Cooper advances that
I'm being
so
mean.
is Douglas Murray the credentialed historian that gets to legislate what history is supposed to take place on the internet? Or is it supposed to be some sort of other administrative body that should be able to rule in Douglas's favor? Is there a court in which these opinions should be
because if you notice, Rob, it's a very good point, because if you notice, and then, you know, he's veering into Konstantin here, which is, again, it's identical to woke leftists. I don't even know. I know, you know, sometimes I'll argue that they're the woke right, but they're not. They're the left. They're just woke. I don't know. It's, oh, yes, Nazi apology. If you're not even allowed to discuss these issues, you're not allowed to look at anything from the other point of view, even when he says things that are mainstream history. Like there's the, you know, like the claim that Adolf Hitler was downplaying his anti-Semitism in the early 30s. There's fuck, I'm blanking on the historian's name, but he did a whole thing on this about how at the Olympics, I think it was Sagar and Jetty was just talking about this on Breaking Points, but or maybe it was Ryan. One of them was talking about this. But I had read this book many years ago, but there's at the I think it was 1936 Olympics, the ones that are in Germany, the ones where you see Hitler tweaking out like a maniac there. They like took down a whole bunch of the anti-Jewish stuff when they were hosting the Olympics, because they kind of knew this isn't going to play that well in the rest of the world. And this is before the war. They were still kind of, you know,
Dude, why the fuck are you doing? Dude, God, you're such a little baby cuck for Hitler, dude. And he's dead. You're a fucking beta. You're a little baby Hitler cuck, all right? For a corpse, all right? You are so fucking shameless, dude. You're actually so shameless. How could you be cucking out for somebody who only spent like 10 years in power? Dude, how could you be cucking out for somebody who only held a regime for less than 20 years? Dude, like, come the fuck on, dude. You're so cringe. How are these people like having so much pride for something that weren't even like a piece of... Dude, why the fuck would you defend Hitler like this, okay? Like, you're really saying, oh, you know, don't you know that Hitler was tweaking out, you know, because he was high on meth or something like that? Clearly, he didn't have that much autonomy when it came to genociding Jews. Come the fuck on, dude. I'm sorry, but when was the last time that we prevented somebody... When was the last time we took accountability from somebody just because they were high on drugs, right? So if somebody was high on meth and they ran over somebody, that person is guilty because that person was high on drugs. But when Hitler is high on meth and he kills like over 6 million Jews, like, you're really gonna tell me now he's like a little bit more absolved of it? Dude, come the fuck on, dude. Fucking cringe ass loser. Get the fuck out, all right?
Like all nation states, you know, they're trying to maintain good standing. But anyway, it's just, oh, you're a Nazi. You're not. This is straight from Goebbels or something. It's
oh
like,
my
it's just so
god.
cheap
Oh
and
my
lame.
god.
But
Oh my god.
to your point, he just kind of throws in there as an assertion that to people who have really studied World War II, like Douglas Murray, like what they never seem to have to explain. Like, by what metric have you decided that Douglas Murray has studied World War II more than Daryl Cooper? Like, listen, again, there's...
Why the fuck are we still defending Daryl Cooper? Daryl Cooper is like literally one of the most obvious Nazi propagandists ever, all right? It's very clear that even his mask on mode is his mask off mode, all right? Like, that's how obvious he is as a Nazi propagandist, all right? Like, literally, like, the stuff that he says is so fucking nuts, all right? Like, he will say something like, oh, don't you know that even Hitler as a kid, there wasn't any proof of him being anti-Semitic? Like, come the fuck on, dude. Like, you have to be fucking joking.
There are levels to intelligence and there are levels to knowledge. And I think that, like, this is one of the things where when I was admitting I'm not an expert, like, I've had a lot of people on Twitter be like, Dave, you are an expert. You should just say you're an expert, dude, and be done with this, like, debate. It's like,
Since
no,
they're
I'm
so
not.
hard to love.
Here's the thing. It's like, in the same way that you could, like, okay, let's imagine me and you are sitting down and let's say we're playing basketball and there is a the #1 high school player in America, like, is you know, you're talking like Kobe Bryant when he was 17 is sitting there, and it'd be very easy for me and you to be like, that's the best basketball player in the world. Like, this is just insane. He just did a 360 dunk. This guy's lightning quick. He's 6'8". This guy's just incredible. But then, like, to someone who plays in the NBA, they'd be like, slow down. Like, there's levels to this shit. And much like as a lot of people who fight, they talk about this. It's like
Is the guy on the right another Hitler apologist? I mean, like, from what I don't know all that much about this guy. However, from what I see so far, he just seems to be Dave Smith. I mean, he's Dave Smith's fucking co-host, so obviously he's gonna have his back, right? Like that's just kind of expected.
better at fighting you get, the more you
So
realize
so
how
yeah,
much
he must
you
be,
suck
right?
at fighting.
I
You
feel
know,
like he
because
kind
you
of
like,
has to be.
but you become a purple belt and it's like, oh my God, you could kick anybody's ass. And you're like, I roll with brown belts and black belts all day. I could not kick anybody. So anyway, I say all of that just to say this, for anybody who's consumed Daryl Cooper's work, feel however you feel about him. You could completely disagree with his politics or his conclusions or any of this. The dude is insanely well researched. Insane. Like,
What, like fucking spearing around his Nazi propaganda,
mean,
well researched.
I genuinely think he's probably read over 100 books about Israel Palestine. Like he's read everything, dude. Like it's just, and so for him to just casually, and I know Daryl, and I know anybody who actually knows his work knows, like, if he's doing a World War II series, he is going to be reading everything about it. So how he just gets to claim that Douglas Murray really does his research and he does. Do you guys ever feel the need? Like, do you ever have to show your work on these claims? How do you know that? How do you know what Douglas Murray's read versus what Daryl Cooper's read? By what metric are you making the decision that he's the one who's done his research and he isn't? I don't. By the way, that
What frustrates me the most about like the so-called well-read thing, right? And I'm gonna try to explain this the best I could. Is that it's good that you are reading and researching, right? It's good to be passionate about what you're talking about, right? I think these are all good and fine, all right? I think it's fine to do something like that. However, the problem is if you're not listening to actual credible historians talk about these same issues and making their conclusions off of it, then you have wasted your time. Because the reason is because the history books, like actual credible history books, could perfectly say something like, okay, you know what? Hitler was tweaking out on meth all the time. That's why he made so many crazy decisions, right? But however, a historian talking about the entire situation in mass could say like, okay, but still, like Hitler was an evil person and he is just like overall reprehensible and he is just like fucking unhinged, right? Like even though you're reading down on facts, that does not mean you should be coming to your own conclusions like that. You should be interpreting based off of like a genuine opinion, right, by an actual historian and see if that's BS or not BS, right? Yeah.
doesn't mean who's right or wrong. These are two very different claims, right? Like there are people who are extremely well read.
By the way, like the way that historians try to conclude based off of like, oh yeah, fuck, where was I going with this? Yeah, I don't know. Like basically, I guess what I'm saying is like the entirety of historian academia, they argue and they bicker and they argue back and forth until somebody wins out with the historical consensus, right? There's a reason why historical consensus exists. It's because historians sit around in a circle and they debate and they argue and they debate, right? Like, dude, you have to give them some credit, right? Like, unless you're talking about you're going to be the one that beats out the consensus of all the other historians, like, it doesn't really matter. It, like, to me, it doesn't really matter that, like what? You think that everybody's in on a conspiracy or something, or that all of academia is like conspiring against your narrative or something. Like that stuff is just cope, okay? There's no way you can beat out against like years and years and decades of historians debating about what is accurate history and what is inaccurate history, right? Like that's all cope, because the matter here is that the reality is that like, unless you're telling me that there's not even a single historian, a group of historians that come out and say, yeah, you know what, we've been lying this entire time. It's like, dude, fuck me, dude. Do you think he's just farming Sam Hyde audience? No, I haven't really seen anything like that. I think he's just trying to be like a contrarian to academia, if that makes sense. I think he had the dog shit taken so embarrassing he's dying on the hill for it. Yeah, 100%.
Who are wrong about everything politically. But like the way they just get to play this game and just dismiss Daryl, it's pathetic. It's like this is not, again, not an argument. None of this is an argument. This is just assertions backed by nothing.
We need censorship because too many people are listening to the other people.
Seems to be what it boils down to. But okay, let's, I mean, they would claim they're not advocating censorship,
this
but
cope
it's
is
like, what
crazy.
exactly are you advocating then? Are you advocating Joe Rogan stop having me and Daryl Cooper on the show? Because what's really the substantive difference between that and advocating censorship?
Well, only they're credentialed people who aren't actually credentialed, such as Douglas Murray.
Right, who have lots of different opinions on lots of different subjects. We can hear from all of them. You could even be a comedian who hosts a podcast, and then you could talk about serious things. We could have a range of opinions, except for war. Except for when it comes to war, in which case we all must be lockstep on the side of these disastrous conflicts that all of you guys support that never work out. You know, it's crazy. It's whatever.
Didn't World War II fucking worked out? Didn't we win? What do you mean it didn't work out? I mean, maybe you felt like it didn't work out because Hitler didn't win, but like, you know, I felt like we won World War II, so it fucking worked out in the end. So fuck you,
Anyway,
I guess.
I'm sure. I know Douglas was saying he downplayed it. People have sent me since then, but I should have had. This is one area I fucked up on a little bit. I should have had that more in the front of my mind. But when I was like, didn't you go to Ukraine and write that article saying that Ukraine will win? And he goes, no, I didn't say that. I said it was possible Ukraine. Right? Go read the article. The line is, Ukraine will win, Russia will lose. Okay, so sorry, guys. Yeah, you guys got it. Much like the COVID experts, you guys have been too spectacularly wrong for too long, and you're losing. You're losing the argument.
Sometimes, you know, it's an expert from the regime based on how many things they've gotten wrong. And so perhaps that's specifically why we need to listen to these people more, is because of their track record of getting things so wrong. That's how you know that they're credentialed regime experts.
It does seem to be the standard. All right, let's keep playing.
Oh my god.
Millions of
Epic.
prisoners of war and civilians died on the Eastern Front because the Nazis failed to plan properly for the invasion is simply a lie. There is extensive documentary evidence which
that's not
confirms
what he
that the
said.
reason millions of prisoners of war and civilians died on the Eastern Front is precisely because the Nazis succeeded in their plans. Because Murray is educated on this issue, he assumes that everyone else, including Smith, is too. Exasperated, he tries to explain that far from being revolutionary,
I love this Joe Rogan sphere anti-intellectual. I feel like there's something really attractive about this space, okay? There's something where I look at them and I'm like, I love watching locals like these. I mean, maybe it's just me being a little bit too offensive here, but like for me at the very least, I like watching these people because I like watching them squirm, okay? I'm sadistic.
these ideas have been pushed by discredited historians like David Irving for decades. Have you listened to his podcast, though?
Okay,
Rogan
can you just pause
interjects?
it for a second?
It turns
So here's just an interesting little thing that you might notice. And again, listen, Constantine, like what you're engaged in here is propaganda. Like this is just pure bullshit. And it's not, again, it's always what it always relies on. Like if you notice with these videos, right? And this is why I say it's propaganda. You're reviewing a debate and brushing aside the debate. You're talking about expertise, but you're not pointing out anything that I got wrong. You're not, with Daryl Cooper, you're not going, okay, here, he had the Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem, or he had the Anti-Humans, or he said these big, huge series, and you're not going like, this is riddled with inaccuracies, and here are 5 of them. You're not doing that. What you're doing is taking a couple of sentences, taking them wildly out of context, misrepresenting them. What Daryl Cooper actually said, he did not make the claim that the Nazis didn't intentionally kill people in Eastern Europe. That was not his claim. What he was saying was essentially, and he said that this applies to Israel also. So what ended up, he started making this point, then Tucker kind of went on a different path, and then he never got back to like really finishing the point. But the thing he was making was actually, what he was doing was attacking neo-Nazis, actually. What he was doing was attacking the defenders of the Nazi regime. He was saying that it doesn't even matter because you're responsible either way. So in other words, his point was, Rob, I don't know if you saw him make this, but he was saying, listen, if you're Israel and you go into Gaza and then you don't have a plan for how to get innocent civilians to safety, well, that's on you. And it doesn't matter whether it was intentional or not intentional or nothing. It's your responsibility now once you commit the invasion. And so likewise, he was saying, even to because one of the things he brought up, and this is it was a letter from like one of the Nazis back to Germany who was out in Eastern Europe. And I guess it was I think it was in 1940, if I'm remembering correctly. But so he said basically they're in the middle of the war. There's a lot of devastation, and he was writing back going like, listen, like all these Jews that we got in these camps, or maybe not just the Jews, but whoever was in these concentration.
I think the problem with Dave Smith and a lot of these like anti-intellectual types, right, is that they are also fundamentally and hilariously not lacking in self-awareness, right? They don't realize the way that they come off to people, and they act like really incredulously when other people aren't receptive to their ideas. Because to anybody who's normal, right, they could just like take a look at the arguments that they're making and clearly come away with the idea that they're making the argument that Hitler wasn't entirely responsible for the Holocaust, that Hitler was methed out, so he didn't have all the decision-making powers that he had, right? That Hitler wasn't really as bad as people were making out to be. So taking away some of the responsibility that Hitler had and putting it onto somebody who we traditionally see as good, like Churchill, right? But the thing is that these people, they are so smug, they are so self-assured, they are so cringe that it's like Dunning-Kruger, where they just believe that they're just simply correct and everybody should just take them at face value. Dude, they're just a bunch of fucking morons, like fuck.
He goes, I think a lot of them are going to starve to death, and it might be more humane to just execute them or something like that. But Daryl was saying, like, look, even if that's the case, that even if you're saying like, oh, it was just like in the war, they didn't mean to do any of this or nothing. He goes, it's still a bullshit excuse because it doesn't matter. You invaded these countries, you set up these camps with no plans for how to take care of these people, and you're still responsible for it. So he wasn't making the argument that they never did this intentionally. He was saying, even if you make that.
By the way, I just want to say this, okay? One of the arguments apparently that, the person that he's trying to defend, right, is making is that, oh, well, Daryl Cooper, all right, this like the apologist guy, right, Daryl Cooper, he made an argument that it wasn't that they were trying to genocide Jews on purpose. It was because they locked up Jews and they didn't have enough money to feed them, right? And it's like, wait, hold on one second. So you're saying that they didn't actually industrialize genocide, right? By having these fucking gas chambers. You're saying that, oh, they only had the gas chambers because they were trying to put these people out of their misery, which is blatantly incorrect and 100%, Nazi apologia, right?